Welcome to the UK RunChat Podcast with me, Michelle. This is the podcast where we bring you inspiring stories and expert insights to help you enjoy your running. Now, today's episode might sound a little unusual for a running podcast because we're talking about walking. But stay with us because walking is actually the foundation of everything we do as runners, really, and it could really help us. My guest today is Dr. Courtney Conley. She's a foot and gait specialist and co-author of a new book, Walk, Your Life Depends on It. In the book, she explores how something as simple as walking can have such a powerful impact on our health, our longevity, and the way that our bodies move. So in this conversation, we're going to be covering what runners can get out of walking more, why modern shoes don't always match the shape of our feet, how walking and breathing are connected, and some simple exercises that runners can do to build stronger, healthier feet. So whether you're a runner looking to stay injury-free, or improve your movement, or simply keep enjoying the miles for many years to come, this episode will have plenty for you to take away. Welcome to the UK RunChat Podcast, Dr. Conley. Thank you so much for joining us today, all the way from the USA.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm in Colorado right now.
Yes, lovely. So let's just start with, why is walking such a powerful form of movement?
I think one of the reasons I was so excited to write this book was I want people to rediscover the lost art of walking and what it does to our bodies, this kind of core biological input that we need as humans, as bipeds. I've wanted to broach the topic of walking as this physiological necessity. When we think of things as how do we optimize our health, there's certain benchmarks. And I think the obvious ones are, we need to sleep very well. We need to eat well. We need to breathe well. We need to keep our respiration rates calm. And I think walking needs to be fit into that conversation. It is like I said, a core biological input that through its repetitive nature and repetitive activity of this low to moderate intensity really stimulates and has an effect on every single system in our body. And so I think, I'm a triathlete by trade, I guess, if you will. That's kind of what, I was a dancer and then a triathlete. So I did a lot of running in my younger years.
Yeah.
And foot pain was something that I had battled with. And so that's kind of been the start of this journey of, how do I get stronger and more resilient? And how do I implement walking into my running routine?
Yeah. So what happens to our bodies if we stop walking? Because obviously we live in a society now where we're geared up, we work at desks, we sit down all day, we drive cars to places, and we don't really tend to go for a walk much, do we? Kind of intentionally. So what's the risk, I guess, of not walking?
When you look at our lifestyles today, you brought up some very good points. Time, the convenience, modern day convenience. All of these things have really literally stopped us in our tracks from a walking perspective. The average person takes about 4,500, 4,700 steps per day, which means there are many of us that are taking much less than that.
Okay. That's not a lot, actually, is it?
No. And you would think, I think when people think that, I go to work and I'm moving around my office, or I don't really have a desk job, but I'm still kind of walking around and I'm at home and I never sit down. You might be surprised at the number of steps that you are getting in or are not getting in. And so, I think that's an important conversation to have, is to really take a self-assessment and say, how much are we really moving? Because it's that lack of motion, the lack of movement variability, that is a problem. And that's why walking is so, I want to scream it from the mountaintops. It's this underutilized, easily accessible form of activity that we all have at our fingertips, that even when done in small doses can have a massive benefit to our health.
Yeah. So my question to you then is, and many will be asking this as they're listening now, because we have an audience of runners. So
Yes.
many runners who frequently run maybe, 4, 5, 6 times a week might think they already move enough. So is
Yes.
walking still important, even if you're a regular runner?
I love this conversation. This is one of the reasons why I started researching all of this, being a runner myself. Let's just break it into an example. Let's say I go for my run at 6 a.m. and I run from 6 to 7. I get a good 5 miles in. I have my steps for the day.
Yeah.
So the question is, does that mean I'm good? Did that just excuse me from really any type of movement activity for the rest of the day because I just piled it in the morning in that 1 hour? And unfortunately, that answer is that does not excuse you. Getting your 1 hour of work done in the morning, and if I were to go to work and then sit for 8 to 10 hours a day, that is still considered a sedentary lifestyle, regardless of that 1 hour of activity. So that's the opportunity here that I really think for runners in particular is we can take what I've called these micro walks.
Yeah.
And it's 5 minutes. It's like a movement snack. And you
I
can
love that
fit those
terminology,
in throughout your day.
Yeah.
So that can become a very easy way to grab movement variability throughout the day.
Yeah, it's a great term, that movement snack. I like it. It makes it seem easy and appetizing, I guess, to just go and have a little walking snack. So 5 minutes is really enough.
Yeah, I mean, a micro walk is 5 minutes. In about 5 minutes, you get about 500 steps.
Wow.
So I think as runners, the conversation doesn't really become step count because we know we're getting our actual steps in.
Yeah.
So it becomes, how do I get more movement activity in throughout the day? And here's the other, thing to consider is the loads going through our bodies when we're running. Okay, I deal with a lot of people with foot and ankle pain. That's kind of my passion. When we are putting a lot of miles and a lot of force going through our bodies, things can happen. We need to be very resilient human beings. And so that walking that's kind of in addition to our running allows us to maintain activity with lower loads going through our system. Running, we put about 2 to 3 times our body weight through our system. Walking, that's 1 to 1.5 times. So it's an opportunity to still create movement without putting the amount of loads that occurs with a running gait.
Yeah, and so it's important to keep moving in kind of small, regular doses then, rather than just go out for a single session. So that's more helpful to our bodies, is it, when we're constantly moving around?
And when you look at a walking gait, for example, we call it a mid-range range of motion activity. So for example, my ankle can move into dorsiflexion.
Yeah.
We have ranges 20 degrees, 30 degrees, 35 degrees. But when you're walking, that ankle, the range of motion in a walking gait is about 10 degrees.
Okay.
So it's less than end range. So it's one of those activities that we're still getting action into our joints, but we're not taking our joints to end range. So I think that's important concept there as well.
Yeah. Okay. So do you think that we underestimate walking just because it feels too simple? Like it's something that we just take for granted, don't we, really?
Yes. I think it's so important. It is, we do take it for granted that it's this underutilized form of activity. If you were to take out, my runners always say, well, why walk when I can run?
Yeah.
I get it. I lived in that camp until I turned about 40.
Yeah.
And then all of my training had to take on a very different approach. Instead of putting the miles and miles on my feet, I had to say, I want to run till forever. There's not a runner that I treat, by the way, that tells me, I want to stop running when I'm 50. That's not what I ever hear. I want to keep running. And in order to do so, You have to respect the physiology of your body. You have to give it what it wants and what it needs as we age. And those things look very different. We can actually become the best athlete, I think, as we age, if we do things appropriately.
Yeah, okay. So I'm intrigued by this because I'm at that kind of stage at the moment where I am mid-40s and I am finding running is taking a bit more of a toll on my body than it ever used to. So I'm trying to incorporate more walking, and it is helping. So is that kind of a natural progression as we age, or because there'll be runners out there shouting, I don't want to give up running, I don't want to kind of do extra walking instead of running. Is that kind of is that something that's definitely going to happen, that we definitely have to default to, or is there a happy medium, I guess I'm asking?
I think there's a happy medium. As long as we can carve time for what the system needs. So what I mean by that is if my whole goal is to be able to run, as we age, we know that tissues get put through a lot of load. We have to find time to strength train. That's on the list.
Yeah.
So if I'm a runner, I'm 2 days a week, I'm strength training. And by strength training, I mean, picking up a weight that's more than 5 pounds.
Yeah.
So we have to carve in time for that. The other thing is being able to have the conversation of run, walk. I have to talk to my patients. It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are two different biological inputs. If we think of running as fitness and performance, and then we look at walking as metabolic health and recovery and this consistent movement that we can do day after day, then those two conversations, I think, make sense. And we can talk to our runners and be like, just because you're walking doesn't mean you're any less fit.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're going to, in fact, lose fitness. There's plenty of research looking at, runners who run and walk, and they're able to increase their endurance, their sustainability, because they're treating their bodies a bit differently.
Yeah. That's really reassuring to hear, actually.
Yeah. And it's, I even looking at races that I've done now versus when I was younger, when I've incorporated run walk, my times really haven't changed. Now, I was never a really fast runner, but I'm able to maintain a pace that was really quite similar to when I was consistently running. And I think that's just because you're reducing fatigue and you have these different inputs happening, and I'm not getting injured.
Yeah, there is that, because that is a fear that we all have, isn't it, as runners, that something will stop us from doing it.
Yes, and that's like I said, a lot of the complaints I hear from the knee down. And so that's why I'm so passionate about this, because I don't think there's any musculoskeletal diagnosis that you can have that will stop you in your tracks more than a foot or ankle diagnosis.
Yeah.
You can, if you have low back pain, I'm like, hey, I can still go for a run. I might change my pace up. I might go on flat terrain or change my terrain. But if your foot hurts, every single step that you take is no longer fun. And I think that's a very big conversation to have, especially in our running population.
Yeah. So what are your tips for preventing that then, for not being at that stage where we're suffering foot pain? Because that's what we hear a lot. And I do have a question from somebody specifically about that I'll come to later as well. So what can we be doing then to strengthen our feet and ankles?
I think when we talk about running, the conversation is everybody's pretty clear that we need to strength train.
Yeah.
We have to be strong if we want to be able to handle the loads of running. I think what we don't hear often is strength training from below the knee. You're hearing squats and kettlebell swings and lunges and all of these things, which are fantastic and necessary. But when we look at strength training programs, few of them discuss how important it is to strength train below the knee. When we're running, our feet take on an incredible amount of load. There are parts of our foot that take on 8, 9, 10, 11 times our body weight. And I think when we hear those numbers, it can be kind of frightening. And it's like, well, of course I need an arch support. Of course I need all of these things. And let me tell you, the foot was designed very well to handle these loads when it's strong and when it's mobile. But unfortunately, and I have my theories on this, most of us do not have strong feet.
No.
And therefore, when we don't have strong feet, the solution is, well, I gotta put something under this. I need some type of arch support. I need shoes that are gonna like help me run.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that those things are bad, because they can be extremely helpful. What I am saying is we need to pay attention to what we're putting on top of them. If you put a strong foot, a mobile foot, a strong calf onto, say, your foot orthosis, you're going to have the and conversation.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we need to, it's not never wear these things or it's what if we paid attention to the strength from the knee down? And I think we would see a lot of different things happening.
Yeah. So there's lots of exercises in your book, isn't there, about how to strengthen kind of feet and ankles. But I think for me, the biggest kind of epiphany really was, oh my goodness, there's a lot to do with the shoes that were sold at the moment as runners.
I know. It's when I have these conversations with my patients, the two things I hear from them are the following. Wow, that really makes sense.
Yeah.
And two, you've given me hope, because I think when people look at their foot, if we understood the anatomy of the foot, that the widest part of our feet should be our toes. So if you were to look down at your feet, the widest part of the foot should be the toes, not the ball of the foot, the actual toes. And there's a reason for that, because when we're running or walking, that's where most of our injuries occur, at the forefoot, because that's where a lot of the load happens at push off. So we better have a very strong foot. We better have very strong plantar flexors, calves, to be able to handle propulsion. When you compromise the toe box, for example, you're literally compromising the anatomy of the foot. That's all I want shoe companies to do, is take like a foot biomechanics 101 course and just say, this is what the foot looks like. Please make a shoe that respects the anatomy of the foot. And I think that's very, very important. So when we have the conversation as, does a foot need arch support? I can confidently say, no, it doesn't, when it's functioning like it should. But you take this big toe and you start messing around with how the alignment is, you're going to change the forces through the foot. So yes, in this scenario, I do need some help.
Yeah.
Because I'm compromising function.
Yeah. So really, it's possible that we're weakening our feet by wearing shoes that aren't the right shape for us. Yeah,
yes.
That's really interesting. I was reading your book yesterday and I went and got all my shoes out of the cupboard and I was looking at them and thinking, does that fit my feet? And actually, some of them didn't. So they're going. It's quite frightening.
It is. And, I know that, because I have this conversation with a lot of the runners in my office. By no means am I saying, ditch all of your running shoes and go run barefoot. That is not the conversation we are having here at all. Having a shoe spectrum, that's what I want the conversation to be. So what I mean by that is, when you're walking around your daily life, wear a shoe that is less shoe. When you wear a more minimal shoe, there's more loads going through your foot. We know that. So you have more loads going through your bones, through your muscles, through your tendons. That's not a bad thing. That's an environment where your foot can get stronger. There's plenty of research.
Strength training, I guess, for your feet, isn't it? That.
Yes, it's a training environment.
Yeah.
When you go on race day and everybody else is getting their 2 to 4% running economy because they're in a super shoe, I'm not saying go put on your barefoot shoe. By all means, wear the super shoe, but pay attention to the body you're putting on the super shoe.
Yeah.
Be as strong and as resilient as you can be. And then I think you really start to benefit from all of this, footwear that is out there. But I do not think we can live in a super shoe, train in a super shoe, and have that be the environment that we put our foot in all the time.
Yeah, because that's not going to strengthen our feet.
Correct.
Yeah. So what about the cushioning on modern running shoes nowadays? What are your thoughts?
I know it's getting thicker and cushier, and
yeah. What's that doing to our feet?
Oh, that's a conversation that. How much time do we have here? My answer to that is you want the least amount of cushion necessary to complete the task. So what I mean by that is our foot has thousands of sensory receptors on the bottoms, and they're screaming for information because it's that sensory input that tells our bodies how to move, if you will. It gives us information. It gives us information on how heavy we're striking our foot. It gives us information on where we're striking our foot. If you were to run barefoot, you're not going to run in overstride and land very hot and heavy on your heel, because the heel pad would give you information that something isn't right here. That hurts.
Yeah.
So you would adopt more of a grazing of the heel or bring your foot closer to your center of mass. We need those inputs because it helps us. So the more stuff you have between the sole of your foot and the ground, you compromise sensory acuity. And you compromise that information. Now, there's always a trade-off. If I'm running, a lot of my runners, when I first got into this, people were running 5Ks. Nobody runs a 5K anymore. It's like I guess that's just not a thing. We're going to run 100K. We're going to run 100 miles, and that's great. That's when, okay, we're going to need some protection.
Yeah.
You're going to need something underneath the foot. It's okay. But that's where I think training, being able to train in different types of footwear. Sometimes we want to be able to feel the ground, right? Yeah. We can work on different gait mechanics. You want to go run 100 miles? By all means, don't make it harder on yourself. You want to run fast over rocks? Put some cushion underneath there. I would just caution about the excess of it. If you've ever seen, a lot of these shoes that are coming out there now, it's kind of scary what you see. I mean, the foot, when it hits, it's almost like there's not a lot of control there. And a lot of this footwear was designed for runners that run at a certain pace.
Yeah.
And, there's a difference between a recreational runner and an elite runner.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we need to be careful of some of that.
Yeah. Okay. So approach with caution. Okay. So you mentioned gait there, and I just want to pick up on running gait, because a lot of runners, we do get hung up on, you mentioned overstriding. Yeah. How important is our gait, and should we be getting too worked up about it? Or is it just a case of retraining our feet with some more minimal shoes?
Yeah, that's such a good question. You could break apart someone's gait mechanics. I mean, there's so many systems out there, and I think too much information is sometimes, it causes some paralysis.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
You have my runners come in with a 20-page gait analysis, and I'm like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
And what clinical information can I grab from it to actually help you? Or are we just instilling this like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm even running because all these things are wrong? It doesn't have to be that difficult, I don't think. If you wanted to keep it simple, that conversation of overstriding, you want the foot to land as close to your center of mass. Okay? Which gets into the foot strike conversation. Some of my runners will come in and it's almost like a confessional to be like, I know I'm a heel striker. And I'm like, it's okay. Okay. Most people are.
Yeah.
All the strike does is change where the load goes.
Yeah.
So if you have knee pain and you're overstriding and you're hitting heavy with your heel, you're going to have more ground reaction force go through your knee and your hip and your back. So if you adopt a midfoot or forefoot strike and you bring that closer to your center of mass, that load still has to go somewhere. It's just going to go into your foot and ankle.
Yeah.
So that gait pattern of having that foot close to our center of mass is, we know, efficient. That's where the foot and ankle strength comes into play.
Right. Yeah.
Because people are like, oh, that makes sense. I want to have a fast cadence. I want to bring my foot close to my center of mass. I'm going to become a midfoot and forefoot striker. Well, congratulations. I think that's a great idea, but you better have the capacity at the foot and ankle to handle those loads. And those that don't, guess what they have as an option now? Oh, I'll just get this shoe that'll just do it for me. And then we miss the boat, literally.
Yeah.
Something's going to give eventually. You might be able to run really fast for a little bit of a time, but if you're not strengthening your foot and ankle, something's going to give.
Yeah. So that's the key, really, isn't it? So just talk to us a little bit about what we would look for if we did want to look for a more functional and minimal shoe then. And obviously we don't want to be going all out and going for a 10K run in it straight off.
No.
We want to train up in it. But what are we looking for?
If I were to put these in order, number one would be the wide toe box. You have to respect the anatomy of the foot. There's a very big difference between a wide toe box and a wide shoe. So the toe box will have the width all the way to where the toes are. Often shoes will say, I'm a wide shoe, so it'll be a 2E or a 4E, where they'll put the width at the metatarsals or at the ball of the foot, but the toes will still be tapered. So a wide toe box is very important. Ultra Running, Topo Athletic, those brands have shoes that respect where the toes sit into the shoe.
Yeah.
When you look at heel to toe drop, so that's the amount of height that the heel is into the toe. A lot of the research will put you in that functional footwear as anything 6 or below.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. As far as stack height or cushion, in the book, I've taken the liberty to define the difference between functional and minimal. They're not the same thing.
Okay.
A minimal shoe. So when we say the barefoot running community, they have the wide toe box.
Yeah.
They have zero drop, which is the foot and the heel, the heel and the toe on the same plane, but they have a very thin and flexible sole.
Okay.
And typically around 15, 14 millimeters or below. That's thin.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Compared to what we're used to now. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And there will some people that love running in that shoe. That shoe is not for everyone to run in. And, shame on me if I'm out here going, everybody needs to run in a minimal shoe. That is not what I'm saying by any means. That is a difficult environment. And in some cases, when you're running in the mountains, that is just not something that's feasible. So that's when you can play around with the stack height of the shoe.
Yeah. Okay.
And, again, I like to lean more towards less is more. So we don't necessarily need 50 millimeters of cushion, 55 millimeters of cushion. I mean, you can have protection and still get your benefit without having too much stuff underneath the foot.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of just building up time in more minimal shoes, are we talking kind of 5-10 minutes a day?
This is a great conversation to have with the runners.
Yeah.
Because this is where you can fit in your walking.
Oh,
if
well,
you
yeah.
use your walking as your training session for your feet.
Yeah.
Because Sarah Ridge did some great research looking at if you just walked in minimal footwear, your feet would strengthen. So use these little 5-minute increments as an opportunity to strength train your foot and ankle. Wear your minimal shoe and start with 5 minutes. See how you do. Maybe the next day you do 2 5-minute walks with your minimal shoe. And then you still wear your running shoe.
Yeah.
But at least you're getting different inputs into your foot and ankle.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that's a fun conversation for runners, because then we can look at walking as actually we're training too. So
yeah,
keep everybody on the same page.
So what will we start to notice when our feet and ankles feel stronger then? What will change for us?
Well, first of all, you'll start seeing toe splay, which in my office, we get very excited about that. If you were to lift up all of your toes and spread them, you should be able to see daylight in between each toe, because the muscles of our foot should be able to splay our toes. I had a runner in my office last week, and she was very excited because she told me she could paint her 4th and 5th toenails now, because her feet, her toes had been so, squeezed together
that her 4th in the shoes, right?
Her 4th and 5th toes were curling under the other toes. So once we started strengthening her foot and we put her in different footwear, she was very excited that she could now paint her and see her 4th and 5th toenails. I was excited because now I knew she had better lateral stability of her foot, but it was a win-win for everyone. So you'll be able to see changes within the foot.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's important.
Yeah.
You will also notice walking, we are endurance walkers. We should be able to walk for long periods of time. I think if you talk to a lot of people in the aging population, one of the things they will frequently say to me is, I feel like I just can't push off my foot anymore. It's kind of hard to get momentum or to push off of my foot. And that's a loss of strength. When we talk about what happens as we age, sarcopenia is a thing, and you better believe it happens in your foot too.
Yeah, wow. It's something we never consider, is it, really?
No.
Yeah.
You lose strength in your feet and you lose power. And that's a problem. One of my things I keep reiterating with my patients is, a very big predictor of falls as we age, a risk factor, is a weakness in our toes.
Wow.
So, if you were home and you were to stand up and keep your body kind of like a soldier and just, have a wall in front of you and just lean forward and try to get your nose as close to the wall as possible, it's your toes that are stopping you from smacking into the wall.
Wow.
So the toes play an important role here, from not only forward propulsion, but also longevity and balance. And so those are the things you'll start to notice, is that your feet feel and you start to have strength and your forward propulsion becomes easier. And that, I think, is a much bigger conversation than we just want to continue to run.
Yeah, wow, it is, isn't it? Yeah. I think what struck me from the early chapters of your book was just how much of an impact just a small amount of walking can have to kind of counteract the risk of serious illnesses, really, and diseases.
I want to scream it from the mountaintops. Yeah. If you were to take mental health, for example, the average person, like I said, walks below that 5,000 step marker. That means many of us are walking below. If you were to walk 5,000 steps consistently a day, you reduce the signs and symptoms of depression. That should be on every prescription pad across the globe who are treating depression and anxiety. Get me to 5,000 steps a day. If you can get someone to 7,000 steps a day, you're reducing the risks of getting depression. I mean, this is, again, easily accessible, underutilized.
Yeah.
And I think I've had plenty of patients who've been in chronic pain, and I talk about this a lot in the book, where their step count has been below 3,000 steps a day. They're not leaving their house much. To be able to say to them, give me 5 minutes. I want a 5-minute micro walk. I have to teach them to feel safe in their bodies again, to feel confident in movement. It's a much bigger conversation than just a diagnosis at the foot. And, we have to treat the person, not the diagnosis.
Yeah.
And that's important. We have to listen. And so this intervention that I use the word intervention as a treatment, but it's a necessity. This is a necessity. Walking is a necessity. So that's the depression, anxiety conversation. When you look at cancer risks, 30 minutes of brisk paced walking, when you look at that 7,000 to 9,000 steps a day, 16% lower risk of cancers. I mean, this is information that I think everybody should be well aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on pace there. Does pace matter when you're walking?
In our book, we talk about the sixth vital sign. So when you go to the doctor, they take your blood pressure, they take your heart rate, they take these vital signs to determine, hey, are there any red flags here? Is there something that we need to be looking for? And these two physicians touted walking speed should be the sixth vital sign. Because when you are watching someone walk, if their cadence is slower, you should be asking yourself, why is that happening? Because a slow cadence can be a predictor of cognitive decline up to 7 years in advance. That's a very big deal. Imagine if we said, hey, we want to work on preventing things like dementia and Alzheimer's, and we can say, hey, watch the speed at someone's walking. And here's what's even more important about that. You catch it. Do you know what the solution is?
Is it to walk more? I don't know.
Walk faster.
Is it?
And it literally, that is a cue. And I tell my patients, I'm like, you're going to download a metronome on your phone. It's free. And we're going to start by increasing your cadence by 5%. I want that goal. I want that step count to hit about 135 steps per minute. That's my magic number. Yeah. On a treadmill, it would be about 3.5 miles an hour. Some research, that cancer research, is 4 miles an hour. Now, I know I'm talking to a bunch of runners here, but I want you runners to get on your treadmill and walk at 4.0 miles per hour for 30 minutes.
Do you know, it's tough, isn't it? It's a brisk pace. That I actually measured mine yesterday because I thought I'll just see what it is. And I clocked 120. Yep. So yeah, that's my challenge, to try and get walking faster. But it is a challenging pace, that, isn't it?
It really is. And it changes your stride. It changes the stride length. That's the conversation of cadence. And when we're walking, we're grazing the heel. It's this beautiful softness that occurs. And when you pick up your pace, you have less ground contact time and your gait starts to change. I live in the mountains in Colorado, and I will tell you, try walking around here at I live at about 7,500 feet. And you try walking 30 minutes at 135 steps per minute, you're getting out of zone 2.
Yeah. That's a good workout, isn't it?
So I think it should be very intriguing to our runners, because we can, even during our runs, if we said, hey, I'm going to walk at this pace for a couple minutes, you're still getting moderate intensity aerobic activity. Yeah. You're also taking less load out of your joints. That's like a win-win.
Yeah.
So that pace, I think, is a very interesting conversation. And again, one that we should be really telling a lot of people about.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to take on the challenge of trying to make our walking a bit quicker. Will that help our running if we're kind of pushing the pace in walking? I know they're different mechanics, aren't they? But will that help us become better at running?
I think it depends on what you're looking at. If you have repetitive load injuries and you start implementing walking into your running protocol, then yes, absolutely. Right? Because you're giving different inputs to the tissues. As far as the skill of running, those are two different gates. So a walking gait is different than a running gait. One thing I will touch on here, walking should be a grazing of the heel.
Yeah. Okay.
That is a different conversation than when we talk about if I'm running, if I'm a midfoot or forefoot striker.
Yeah.
You have to graze the heel when you walk because it initiates pronation.
Yeah.
And that's a very good shock absorber to our bodies. So again, different biological inputs. We need to have that walking gait for things like different rates of pronation, for example.
Yeah. So you've mentioned pronation there, and I think that's something that runners also get a little bit excited about in terms of whether they're an overpronator or,
Yes.
Are these special insoles that were kind of sold, are they really necessary?
I think let's talk about pronation first.
Yeah.
I have patients that will come in and they will say, I'm a pronator, I'm a supinator. And I say, congratulations, as you should be.
Yeah. Okay.
The foot is this beautiful sensory organ, if you will, that is designed to adapt to terrains. It has to change shape. When we think of pronation, when our heel hits the ground, the foot lengthens and the strength of our foot controls this pronation. And then when it lengthens, we can then contract and I can then propel forward. So pronation is not only necessary, it's one of those movements that I'm constantly actually treating people to find and to control. I don't want to avoid or block pronation. With that being said, if I can't control it, and I can't control how the rate at which my foot is hitting the ground, then things like foot orthoses, those things can be very helpful. But I always say we have to have the and conversation. If you think or if you are wearing a foot orthotic or a foot orthosis, you have to be strengthening your foot. You have to be strengthening your hip. You have to be strengthening the system that makes contact with that device. And then it's the and conversation. Rather than, I'm just going to wear this device and think that it's going to work all this magic for me. That's not how it works.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Things like calf raises, single leg calf raises, being able to single leg hop, all of these, there's so many options that we have to be able to strengthen the foot and ankle. So for those who think that overpronation is a factor, you have to strengthen your foot, you have to strengthen your calf, and you have to strengthen your hips.
Yeah. So it can be improved. It's just a case of putting the work in first.
Earlier the better.
Yeah. Okay. Rao, I do need to ask you about something in your book, and that is the idea of backwards walking. Now we do hear about the backward running trend as well. So I was intrigued to see that backwards walking is recommended as well. So why is that beneficial, and what does it improve?
It's one of my favorite interventions to keep people active when they have pain. Okay. When you walk backwards, I think, we know the mechanics of it, right? So when you're walking backwards, it's a toe heel.
Yeah.
So it's a different than a forward progression. So you're getting more quadricep engagement, for example. We know that strong quads are dampeners of shock to the knee. So for people who have knee osteoarthritis, things like walking backwards can be very powerful because we're working on different neurological inputs. We're engaging the quadricep, for example. But the other thing, and I don't think there's as much talk about this, is the visual field of what's happening.
Okay.
We now start walking backwards and we have a different visual perception rather than moving forward. And I think that's important. Just like we would train movement variability, we want to train visual variability. So things like that can start to change those neurological inputs as well. And then the other thing is, I think there's a very good place for neurological distraction.
Yeah.
So when I have patients that they start walking and they know their pain, they have knee pain or they have pain moving forward, simply saying, okay, we're going to stop. You're going to start going backwards. It's a distraction. It's a neurological distraction. And I think that can be very important to keep the momentum of movement. So even when people are walking outside or they're running and they start to experience pain or some type of signal, it doesn't mean stop in your tracks. It just means pain is a normal human experience. And so if we can reframe it and say, all right, well, I'm still going to keep moving, but I'm just going to switch my inputs. I'm just going to start walking backwards. We can calm the nervous system down. We get into more of that parasympathetic, calm state that we're all after, right?
Yeah. That's why we run. Yes.
And then we can just start moving forward again.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, so it's an actual tool to help your brain as well. That's fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So is that something that runners could add into training, maybe on a treadmill, or would that be helpful?
I think the break of running in that forward progression to stop and walk backwards, stop and change up these inputs can be very helpful. Very helpful.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So for runners who want to still be running then into their 60s, 70s, 80s, what habits really matter then?
I would, this is like if someone was asking this myself, because I want to be able to continue to run for, it's good. I love it.
Yeah.
We have to be able to respect what happens to our bodies. And that means taking note of our systems need loads. So we need to be strong. We need to respect recovery. That's when the magic happens, is in the recovery. That was a hard conversation for me to accept until probably my mid 40s. And I was like, oh, there's something to this recovery. And that's when I really started to have this love affair with walking, because I'm like, I can still get my yayas out. I can get out there. I can still walk. It's actually facilitating my running. I have less load going through my tissues. And I have noticed that my running does get easier.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing for us runners to really consider, is it doesn't have to be this pound the pavement. There is a very sweet spot of running and walking and strength. And I think we all have the capability of actually becoming better athletes as we age.
Yeah.
Our training will just look a little bit different.
Yeah. And walking is, of course, a great way to recover, as active recovery, isn't it, as well?
Yes.
Yeah. As long as we're not trying to hit out that 4 mile an hour pace.
That's right. That's right. And obviously pay attention to your foot and ankle strength. That's I really want to, get as many people to understand that as possible, because I see some, kind of some heartbreaking cases.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we all as runners know what happens, how we feel when we can't run.
Yeah.
It is not a good feeling. There's a reason we all run. And imagine if you were to take that to one step and say, well, what if I couldn't walk because I had pain? Or, you can start to see how that would have this cyclical effect. And it becomes a very, very, a bigger conversation. So, I think we have to think about those things. And really, I think walking is truly the panacea of medicine.
Yeah.
For no matter what you are battling, whether physical, mental, or emotional, there is a place for you to pay attention to a walking gait, walking steps in your life, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely got me thinking about how much I walk and making me want to kind of do a bit more, really.
Yeah.
Are there any common myths that you'd like to bust during this episode about walking?
I think the biggest one that people talk about is the 10,000 step myth, which is actually, that was No science-backed research on that run. That was actually designed by a Japanese marketing campaign. They developed a pedometer, and it was actually called the Manpo K, that means 10,000 step meter. So that was where that whole thing came from. And it's really interesting because if you Google how many steps, there's still a lot of respectable resources that's saying that's the number. The other thing to consider is there is a law of diminishing returns with steps. So, for example, anything, when we look at where am I going to get the maximum health benefit, you're looking in between that 5 to 9,000 step range. The 5 to 7,000 step, those you get some significant health benefits there.
Yeah.
When you get over the 10,000 marker, there is this law of diminishing returns. So in other words, you're going to reach what you need to reach. Anything in that is excess. So I'll have this conversation with some of my patients who'll say, well, I'm getting 16, 17,000 steps a day. I say, that's great. Well, are you strength training? And they'll say, well, no, I don't have any time because I'm getting 17,000 steps a day in. And that's when I love having the conversation. Yeah. Well, let's do this. Let's cut you down to 9 or 10,000 steps a day. You're still going to reap the benefits for your health. And then we're going to open up some time for you during the week to strength train, to pick up running if you want, to open up the doors for other types of activities that's outside of just getting this maximum step count. And I love that conversation because I think that movement variability is so, so important.
Yeah. And there's always room for improvement, isn't there? Yeah. Because I was thinking I generally do, because I have a dog as well as run.
Yeah.
So I'm generally usually on about 15,000 to 20,000 steps a day. So I was thinking, where can I improve? But I've realised that I'm not walking nowhere near quick enough as what you're recommending we should be walking. So instantly there, I've got, right, I can try and improve that.
Yes, that would be, so in the book, we have 3 different programs built in. So there's a base program, there's a build program, and there's a boost program. So because I think that everyone on this planet can benefit from learning about this topic, if you were sitting below, say, 2,500 steps, you have a program that can talk about, hey, we need to start at baseline here. And baseline that's a good word. There shouldn't be a negative tone to that because that means we're going up from there.
Yeah.
So it gives you resources on how to do that slowly. Then when you get into build, these are the people that are hitting about 5,000 steps a day. How do we build? How do we just eke a couple more thousand steps? Maybe we add in some strength training, for example. When you get into the boost program, and this is where someone like yourself would sit, now it's how do I spice things up? And a lot of that can be, for example, gait speed.
Yeah.
Walking gait speed. Adding some power training to your walks. I love that. Like adding in thinking about walking as power. We lose power faster than we lose strength. And that's for runners, that's not what we want to be doing. So that's also the conversation of how can I boost what I'm already doing and maximize what I'm doing?
Yeah. I know that's really interesting. Thank you. I do have a couple of questions from our listeners for you, if that's
sure.
Okay. So Rachel asked, now she's been having some issues with her ankles with kind of stiff Achilles. And she's asking how to not get stiff because she does a standing up all day job. What would you recommend for Rachel? She's a regular runner, but has a standing up all day job.
My first kind of question to her would be, what is she doing to improve stability and strength at the foot and the ankle? Right. I would encourage having her foot on the ground. That first 5 minutes of input, so barefoot on the ground, get your foot to feel the ground. If she's not implementing some type of foot strength work, calf raise work, that is all very important to stabilize the ankle. Something that we think about with ankles, I think when most of us think of our ankle motion, we think of this kind of forward propulsion. One of the beautiful things that the foot and ankle do is they also go into inversion or eversion, which is kind of this, back and forth motion, side to side. Don't be afraid to train into those planes. So you could put your foot on a slant board, for example, and do a calf raise on a slant board. Now, for someone who has ankle instability, they might be going, oh gosh, that sounds frightening.
Yeah.
And my answer to them is, well, you know what's more frightening? When you go outside and you're running on a trail and you step on a rock and your foot's going to go into that position anyway.
Yeah.
So why not train it to see it? Train the ankle to be strong in all of these different positions so that you create resiliency.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. We have a question from Catherine. Now she says she calls herself a special hypermobile person. So she's asked for suggestions for strengthening and protection. She says her hypermobility is mainly in her lower half, so her ankles and her toes bend and flex more than they should. Any advice for people like Catherine?
Yeah, I see a lot of hypermobility.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about two different kind of ways to go about this. And it's going to be from the top down and the bottom up. So the bottom up, I think, for hypermobility patients is I like them to be able to, again, feel the ground. I love isometric contractions. So in other words, if you were to do a calf raise, you would hold that position. Right. Okay. It develops control. The other thing for my hypermobility is co-contractions. So the way I like to kind of teach this is if I was going to go up to a dartboard and I was going to want to hit the bullseye, when I bring my arm up, everything is contracting, right? Because I want precision. I want to hit that bullseye. So it reduces what we call kinematic error or joint error, co-contractions. So for my hypermobility patients, I'll have them do co-contraction exercises. That might look like, for example, having their foot on the wall and just contracting tissue as they try to drag their heel down. Right. So things like where I'm contracting or creating the stiffness in the lower leg. From the top down, I think that there is a very, very big correlation, and this is going to open up a whole can of worms. So we might have to do a round 2 here of the relationship between the pelvic floor and the feet. Okay. Our pelvic floor and our hip musculature, I think, are paramount in what's happening at our feet.
Wow.
I am always working with my hypermobility and really with all patients on how to be able to breathe and how to be able to relax their pelvic floor and how to be able to control their pelvic floor musculature so that they can thus engage their hip musculature, which can then help their foot.
Wow. Yeah, everything's connected. Wow.
Yes. And this is a very big conversation for our runners and our females that have incontinence and pelvic floor issues, because I was one of them. And I'm like, I'm not going to stop running because I'm going to figure out why this is happening. And so that opened up this whole kind of can of worms for me. And I'm very happy to be on the other side of that. But breath work is very important for hypermobility patients, being able to control the pelvic floor.
Okay. Wow. So where might somebody find more information about that?
So on our YouTube page and on our Instagram account.
Yeah. Okay.
Especially on our YouTube page, we have information and kind of a whole little series on breath work, how to move your pelvic floor, the relationship the pelvic floor has on your feet.
Yeah.
So that's a good resource. We have free exercise videos and all things to educate there. But yeah, that's a good place to start.
Yeah. Wow. Mind blown. Yes, totally.
Yeah. It's, this is just one more point because I think it's very cool. When you see people that have very stiff feet, they'll say, I'm a high arched foot. okay? And their feet look like they're gripping the ground. I really think that that is a nervous system response to a system that is in fight or flight, that they're in this high sympathetic tone, and the feet are reacting. The feet are going, okay, I'm just doing what you're telling me to do, which is try to stabilize you. And so that's where I think a lot of this pelvic floor and breath work plays a very, very big role in what you see at the foot.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. So it's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you very much. Yeah, we've covered some topics there, haven't we? So what one message would you like to leave people with about walking?
I hope that we can really take advantage of this lost art, of something that is the panacea of medicine, whether you are physical, mental, or emotional challenges, that this is an answer for so many metabolic diagnoses and mental diagnoses and emotional diagnoses, that we have something that's so easily accessible that we can literally get benefit from walking out of our front door for 5 minutes. It's that easy of a conversation. There's so many things out there. We need to do this, and we need to eat this amount of protein, and we got to do all this stuff. And I hope that walking is on the top of that list, because it is the foundation for everything else. And if there's a way to let your foot feel the ground, to gather some essential neurological inputs, I think that is kind of icing on the cake there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. So your new book, Walk, Your Life Depends on It, it's out on the 5th of May, and I believe it's already out on pre-order, isn't it?
Yes.
So I think it's a really helpful reminder that sometimes the simplest forms of movement can have the biggest impact on our health. So if you enjoyed this conversation, please let us know. We always love hearing your feedback, and if you're changing anything and incorporating more walking, or maybe even a little backwards walking, do let us know. And if you found this episode helpful, then please do share it with a friend. A huge thank you to Dr. Courtney Conley for joining us and sharing her insights from the book today. You've been listening to the UK RunChat Podcast. Until next time, don't forget to pay attention to walking as well as running.